Hello everyone, I'm Asha Nayaswami, and this is the 5th in our 5-class series about the chakras in everyday life. In daily life, I think is what we called it. So we've now talked at the beginning about the principles of self-realization and how we came for these to be important. Now we've gone through the characteristics of the 5 basic, the chakras that involve us in the world, in our daily life. And tonight we're going to make it all make sense, I hope, and inspire you to go forth and live your lives more dynamically, more courageously, and more consciously, which is the whole point here. So let's start with the prayer. Heavenly Father, Divine Mother, Friend, Beloved God, Jesus Christ, Babaji Krishna, Lahiri Mahashaya, Swami Sri Yukteswar, Beloved Master, Paramhansa Yogananda, Saints of all religions, humbly we bow to you all. Help us to understand on deep intuitive levels how the divine law works in our lives to make us happier and freer. Help us to understand how cooperating with divine law will bring us every fulfillment our heart is longing for. Give us the clarity and the strength and the calm inner attention that we may hear your voice, that we may follow in your footsteps, that we may fulfill our true destiny and come home to thee. Om. Peace. Amen. Keshava will play a couple of chants for us. We'll meditate for a few minutes and then we'll start in with the class proper.
Sing thy name, I will drink thy name and get all drunk. Oh, with thy name I will sing thy name, I will drink thy name and get all drunk. Oh, with thy name. Om Guru, Om Guru, Om Guru, Om. Om Guru, Om Guru, Om Guru, Om. I will sing thy name, I will drink thy name and get all drunk. Oh, with thy name I will sing thy name, I will drink thy name and get all drunk. Oh, with thy name. Om Guru, Om Guru, Om Guru, Om. Om Guru, Om Guru, Om Guru, Om. I will sing thy name, I will drink thy name and get all drunk. Oh, with thy name I will sing thy name, I will drink thy name and get all drunk. Oh, with thy name. Om Guru, Om Guru, Om Guru, Om. Om Guru, Om Guru, Om Guru, Om. I will sing thy name, I will drink thy name and get all drunk. Oh, with thy name I will sing thy name, I will drink thy name and get all drunk. will sing thy name. I will drink thy name and get all drunk, oh, with thy name. And in preparation for our final class tonight, let's chant the ancient and very powerful invocation to the Guru, the hymn to Brahma. Qualities and thought, Guru Lord, I bow to thee. Guru Lord, I bow to thee.
Okay, my friends, if you have any questions, be sure and write them in the whatever the little boxes are. In case you will let me know. If we were sitting together, this would be a time when you would have lots of questions. So what I want to talk about now is I want to talk about karma, vrittis, and how to work with this energy, because now that we sort of know that this energy is here, we want to start thinking about what we can actually do about it. Now, there's a lot of exercises for attuning to the chakras. Particularly, Swamiji has a way of chanting Om at each of the chakras. We also have some positive affirmations. There's a great many things that you can do to increase your inner awareness of the chakras. I have deliberately not worked with all of it that much, because what I've been trying to get more, as I explained at the beginning, is sort of a philosophical understanding of what the chakras are and why they're meaningful. So we may touch on a little of this toward the end, but you'll have to look in other sources for that. I believe among the references in the material that's wherever you're watching this, Savitri, Nayaswami Savitri has a wonderful workbook for working on the chakras, and I would highly recommend that. Any classes that she's given would be of benefit, and throughout the Ananda system you'll find many choices. that include many more exercises than I've done. What I was hoping, what I was actually following here, and is obvious already, has been this is daily life, like this is what it means to us. But what I want to explain to you now is how the chakras define our consciousness and how the chakras are the instrument of karma from lifetime to lifetime and what we can do about that, okay? Because that's where the chakras really matter. So I'm going to give you my own artwork now. I mean, this fine piece of art is going to be replaced by something even more primitive. It's the only way I can put it. Okay, now let me just try to think this out for a minute. As we've talked about, I mean, I'll just make a stick figure. That's the easiest way to do this. Okay, with our happy little head up here, right? Okay, the chakras, you know, as we've done like this, and then we have the heart. Then we have the throat chakra. Well, I'm sort of out of balance. I have to put the heart up here. Okay, there we are. The heart chakra. Then we have the throat chakra here. Then we have the medulla, and we have the spiritual eye. So the way Master teaches us about energy flowing in the body, Master's original contribution to the science of yoga is the energization exercises. And by original, what I mean by that is he actually developed those exercises himself. Like yoga postures have been in existence forever. Some sadhus, some sages, some avatars at some point created those systems to show how energy flows in the body or manifested those postures in their own bodies by the spontaneous flow of energy. Anandamoyi Ma, when she was a young child, she would assume mudras and she would assume certain yoga postures, not consciously putting her body in those positions, but the energy running through her put her body into those positions. And she would be unconscious of the fact that she was assuming things that were classic pictures of yoga practice. And what that was about is, I mean, what she was demonstrating the truth of, that if we deliberately then put ourselves into that position, it will facilitate the flow of energy in that way. And almost everything that is taught in yoga practice, including Kriya itself, in Master's path, including Kriya itself, was not invented by our gurus, but merely passed on from ancient times. As Master writes in the autobiography, you know, Kriya or something very much like it was taught by Jesus to his disciples, and he names all these other masters throughout history. And in the Bhagavad Gita, we have Krishna just talking about having passed this teaching down through all of these different sages from as far as any human memory goes back, because this is the way we're made. What it is that the sages perceive the way the energy flows in the body, and then they try to find words for that which is hard to express, so that a person from our level of understanding can begin to interiorize our consciousness, and gradually what begins as an intellectual understanding or some kind of a somewhat of an intuitive knowing shifts from the level of theory to the level of actual experience, because that's the fundamental reality of all these teachings, which is this is not something that we're guessing at. This is what, when we follow these certain steps, these certain things happen. So because we were moving from Kali Yuga into Dwapara Yuga, Master wanted to find a series of exercises, some way to just literally access energy, because energy is now the medium of the age that we're moving into. So he talked to us about the energization exercises, where we use our willpower to master the flow of energy, to increase, decrease. The point of the energization is to give us access to energy under the power of the will. So even though the energization exercises use the physical body, what we're really training is concentration and will. And in the teaching of the energization exercises, Master explains to us that the point at which energy enters the body is the medulla, and this is the sixth chakra, and I talked about this, I believe, a little last week, where the spiritual eye is the individual identified with the Christ consciousness. The medulla is the jiva, the individual identified with the material world, with the ego, which limits it. At the spiritual eye, it's that which makes us unlimited. Master says that the beginning point of human life is the medulla. This is where the sperm and the ovum come together and the whole body is formed. We've talked about this in previous classes. So for now what I'm talking about, we want to think of how energy flows in the body and why it behaves the way it does, and primarily how energy is translated through our consciousness, and how our consciousness is affected by the pattern of the chakras. I mean, I think I've said enough to introduce that, and I think we have an idea here. I'm not sure if my artwork is actually going to be necessary. I might be able to do it from here. But here's the point that I'm wanting to make to begin with. Each of these chakras, these are not fixed points. These are not physical. They have a location in space because we're operating in our bodies. And so it's, in a sense, our chakras are trapped within the physical vehicle that we've created because the ego has identified with this physical body. The jiva has identified with this physical body. So the energy pattern that is me is connected to this physical body. Now, if I were free enough in my consciousness, I could leave this body behind and take my consciousness somewhere else. I could travel into the astral worlds. I could go to the other side of the earth. I could bilocate and make myself appear in another city, even though my body is still here. This is what the great masters can do because their identification is with the Christ consciousness. The Christ consciousness is infinite. So they can take who they really are, which is their energy field, their field of consciousness, take it to another, quote, physical location, and if necessary, manifest another body around it so that others can perceive it, because they're not limited, they're not identified with this. But most of us are identified with this. So the energy pattern that is us, and more than anything else, it is the energy pattern in the chakras that defines who we are and what kind of magnetism we put out. And in a universe that is nothing but energy, our energy pattern and our magnetism determines everything. I mean, just think about that for a minute. We feel that this world is physical, but it isn't really physical. This is science as well as yoga. This is just energy fields. And I'm walking around inside a physical body, but what's really coming out from me is my energy pattern, my magnetism. So the magnetism that I put out is really what's rippling out and influencing this universe. And this is what's known as karma, actually. When we say that everything that happens to us is because of our karma, karma is another word for the magnetic energy pattern within my chakras. So whatever that energy pattern is, it absolutely determines every bit of my fate, whether I'm fortunate or unfortunate, whether I am lucky, whether I attract good friends, whether I keep running into enemies, whether I have good health or bad health. And so it's the single most important reality, which is why when Master starts talking about and teaching us Kriya Yoga, which I'll talk about in a moment, and the fact that through the practice of Kriya Yoga, we can directly influence the energy pattern in the chakras. That's what makes Kriya Yoga, as a meditation practice, the airplane route to God. Because if we can shift that energy pattern in the chakras, absolutely everything about our reality begins to change. Now, the thing we have to understand, as I was starting to say here, that these are not fixed realities. They may feel fixed, because we can't just change them at will. You know, I can just change this dress if I want to change it. I can cut my hair or let it grow just by making a very light decision. But I can't say, oh, I want the energy pattern of my heart chakra to be different. You know, just sort of say that casually in the morning, like I think I'll make an appointment with my hairdresser, and then just have it happen. Because it is an energy pattern, and an energy pattern, well, it's energy. It's built, it's a force. It's not a thing, though, it's a force. And it's a force that is created by us. And I know I talked about some of this at the beginning, but I want to talk about it again here. Every time we have a thought, an action, a feeling, a response to life, we are affirming a certain reality. You know, in truth, there is nothing but God. In truth, everything is bliss. To my experience, there are many, many variables, and there is a lot that happens to me that is not bliss. Okay? But the truth is, there's only bliss. But in my reactions, in my feeling heavy in my body, in my feeling sad in my heart, in my feeling ambitious to make something happen, in my exercise of my willpower, all of these things I'm registering energy. Energy is running through me. And because I am identified, my jiva, I live in this chakra more than in this one, or if I live in this chakra more than in this one, everything that this energy pattern does, I define as my own and I hold on to it. That's what the ego does. The ego says, what happens to this one is happening to me. And it is my self-definition, and I'm going to just keep operating this way. This is why if we just shift to here, even though energy still flows through us and experiences still flow through us, the sense of self-definition has shifted away from the personal experience to the infinite experience. This is what an avatar experiences. This is what a great saint experiences. This is what all of us experience sometimes when we lose ourselves in creativity or we give ourselves in perfect selfless love. All these different ways in which for a moment or for an hour or for a year or for a lifetime eventually, as Master put it, it was so touching. I love that one of this comment. He said, people make a grave mistake in thinking that everything that happens to them personally concerns them personally. And I've always laughed at that, because it's so, like for most of us, it's like, of course it does. But he says it's just an error. It's just energy flowing through. It's not really us. So what happens is, when we have the energy, I think I can actually do it with this. I don't think my artwork is any improvement. Well, let's see. Let's see what I need here. No, I need it because I need to make marks. So energy comes in from the medulla. And it actually, and the energy then flows through the chakras in a pattern like this. It's a zigzagging pattern like that, just what we're doing. And each of these chakras, chakra means wheel. It's moving energy like that. Wheel. It's called a wheel because it's a spinning field of energy. We also call it a whirlpool. A vritti is the word that we use in Sanskrit, and there's really no other word for it. And vritti is a really great word that's worth knowing. A vritti is a whirlpool. So what happens is we become committed to certain realities. And we become committed to them because of our life experience. Let's say, for example, you know, I'm very lonely and I really want someone to love me. This is a heart energy. This can be a second chakra energy, can be a first chakra energy. Let's say I lived a lot of lifetimes as a female person, but I was a spinster and I was dependent on my relatives to take care of me, and I want to have my own home and my own husband, like this. Okay, so we get this idea in our mind, and it's not necessarily because of love. Let's say it's because of security. So we get this seed idea, I want my own home and my own husband. And then we begin to rotate a lot of thoughts and energies and desires around that. Okay, we do this maybe over many incarnations. And much of the time, maybe we actually get what we want. We have the security we want because we have the husband and we have the house and whatever it is that we think that we need. We have multiple children and our children are forced to take care of us. So this whole vritti gets stronger and stronger. Security, I have it, this is how I get it. So there's this big magnetic field that begins to build up here. So we die, a person dies, and this has worked. Or maybe it's unfulfilled, but whatever it is, it's still strong there. So when we're born again, there's a lot of energy seeking security in the first chakra, and let's say we're in a cycle where we're always in a female body, and we ended at, let's say we're at a time in which women can't create their own financial security, or even if they can, we'd rather have a man take care of us. So there's a whole lot of energy running here. So I'm going to start making a female body even just when the sperm and ovum unite. I need to make sure that I'm an attractive woman. Perhaps I need to make sure that I'm born into a certain class of people where the husband potential are going to have enough money to keep me in the style to which I am accustomed. And then even from the time that I'm just beginning my life, my thoughts are always running around this. My favorite toys when I'm playing are the bride and the groom, and I play house all the time, and I make my little brother be my husband, and just all these different things. There's a whole energy field that's just this vritti here. So whenever energy flows in through the medulla, the energy is neutral. It doesn't have an opinion. It's just energy. But as it begins to flow through the chakras, and it has to flow through all the chakras because it's the life force that keeps us alive. Every chakra is essential for the survival of a human being. I think I may have mentioned this at the beginning, but whether I did or not, you can reduce a human being. You can cut off both legs and both arms, and just this much is enough. And you can still live. You can still live a complete and full incarnation. Of course, you're limited by your physical disability, but as soon as you invade the space in which the chakras are whirling, then the human body can't survive anymore. But when the energy comes in, the energy, it's just life force, and it's just pouring into you. But what it is that all of these different vrittis and all of these different places where we have this karmic, this idea, whatever it might be, and then we've built a whole world around that idea. I mean, let's think of something else, that we want. I want to have power in the world. Let's say right here, I want to have willpower and influence. So I need to be able to, let's make it the opposite way. I need to be a big man with a really loud voice and a lot of capacity to just make things happen the way I want them to happen. I was in company once with, just as it happened, we were on a pilgrimage, and there were like about 6 really big men in that group. I mean, over 6 feet and husky, and almost all of them worked in some way, did some kind of physical work, like they were builders or that sort of thing. And I just was walking around, actually, just to make it the story complete, I was walking around the Taj Mahal with them, which was totally fun. Because I led pilgrimage tours to India for a number of years, I can speak of multiple visits to the Taj Mahal, which most people in the world don't go as often as I have been, but it was part of my responsibility. So this was not my first trip, but I'll tell you, walking around the Taj Mahal with people who build buildings was a wholly different experience. I mean, they noticed things and they looked at things and they commented on things that I never would have seen because they were actually literally figuring out how it was constructed and kind of guessing, the decisions that were made. I mean, perhaps they helped build it, for all I know. But what I observed and experienced with them, which was so interesting to me, which was they all had these very strong, big physical bodies. And they moved through the world as people with big physical bodies. some of you may be listening to this, but anybody watching this, my body is female, and even as a female body, it's not particularly big. And I'm feisty, but I'm not strong like that. And I just saw, oh my gosh, the central premise of their incarnation was just so different than mine in terms of just the body that they made. You can imagine, third chakra, fire chakra, I am going to make my mark in this world, and not necessarily in a bad way. These were all actually wonderful men, wonderful devotees, gentle and loving people, but they moved through this world. So you can see, I need strength. I want to be a soldier. I want to build things in this life. Or maybe I've been a weakling. Maybe people have bullied me. Maybe people have taken terrible advantage of me. See, the point, the center point can have many different things. Maybe I was really hurt because I was small, and I'm never going to be hurt like that again. So the center point there is one of determination to have the willpower to get my way. And so a whole series of vrittis get built around that. I'm going to find parents who are going to give me the potential to have a big, strong body. I'm going to choose to be a male because that's what I need. Perhaps I'm going to be born to an athletic family where I'm going to be able to study martial arts from when I'm really young. And they're going to value this physical strength, and maybe they're going to be a little harsh on me so that I become tough. And all of it starts with, I was small and I was hurt, and I don't ever want that to happen to me again. So we're walking around with this pattern. We don't even know what the pattern is for. We don't remember anymore what that center point is. But as long as that center point is there, this vritti is going to be held in place. Now, if you think about it as a whirlpool in a river, there's always, the river is just flowing, and the river's flowing just fine, but something catches some of the water. If you ever, when we lived up at Ananda Village, the Yuba River was not that far away, and we would go visit there. And I love water. I've always just loved to be in water and be near water and watch the river flow, and then just watch the patterns. And of course, thinking about the chakras, you would see how the river would be flowing, but something would catch it. Maybe a big branch would get washed in, or a tree would fall over, and all of a sudden, the smooth flow of the water is interrupted because some object is there. And so now the water has to make a different pattern. And if the object is set up in a particular way, the flow of the river, and you have to think of it like this, a drop of water has one intention. Drops of water are very, very determined. They're going to get back to the sea. And so all the water in the universe is heading back to the sea. As soon as it comes out of the earth or falls from the sky, it starts heading back to the sea. So there's this one force going one way, but then something is put in the river, and then the river has to make a different pattern. And it often will make a whirlpool. And a whirlpool is just, it can't progress. It just keeps circling, or the water has to keep feeding it. It's not necessarily the same drops. But every time that river comes by, it has to feed that whirlpool, keep that whirlpool going. And it will keep having to feed that whirlpool as long as the center point of the whirlpool is stronger to draw the water into itself than the flow of the river is to head toward the sea. And see, this is exactly what's happening with our vrittis. Every one of our vrittis has a center point of some idea that is not the same as I totally surrender to God's will, whatever He wants is what I want. And so when the energy is flowing, and it has to flow through all the chakras in this sense, it's like if you're in a material body, all 5 of these chakras are required for us to live a balanced life. This is what I've been talking about for the last 4 classes. We have to have steadfast loyalty. We have to be grounded. We have to have the flexibility of water. We have to have the energy of fire. But the question is whether we dissipate that energy out and just spend it in ways that don't build our inner strength, or whether we take that quality and elevate it back through the chakras and operate from the spiritual eye. So the way I think about this is, I mean, nowadays we have, because this is being filmed during the pandemic and a lot of us are getting a lot of things delivered. My sister sent me this little joke that said the UPS man knocked on the door the other day to see if we were all right. Turns out my wife had not ordered something for 2 days and he was afraid that maybe we died inside the house. And that was sort of, she was ruefully saying that was about her. So, but everybody's coming in, people are dropping off these packages. And this big truck is there and it has all this stuff in it and it's committed. You know, it belongs to all these different people. I always think of it like this, like the little UPS truck of energy drives up to the medulla and it's delivering us our quota of life energy. Of course, it's a constant stream. It's not like it's a delivery like that, but let's just say it's a delivery and all this energy is being delivered. And the Christ consciousness says, oh boy, you know, we're going to take the energy from the medulla, we're going to use it to experience God. And the UPS driver says, not exactly. Some of these packages are committed. And so he comes in with this big load of packages like this, but this one has to keep all the vrittis going in the first chakra, this in the second chakra, this in the third chakra. And by the time he gets all the way down to here and sort of comes back running up, this is not metaphysically sound the way I'm saying it, but it's like it's all just deposited. And so we want to have all this energy to love God. We want to have all this energy to serve and to create and to do all these wonderful things, but somehow between the delivery and the expression, there's a lot, everything leaks. Just the amount that's left to use for our higher aspirations isn't as much as comes into us. Because all of these vrittis, they're just using up a lot of energy all the time. Just keeping going, all of these different thoughts and feelings. It's been extremely interesting to me in the last, really, I guess it's been the last few months that this has been going on. Even though I'm busy every day, because since the middle of March of 2020, and this is the last day of September, it's Lahiri's birthday, just by the way, also, which is Lahiri Mahashaya's birthday today, September 30th. But in all these months, there's been a certain, I don't know what you would call it exactly, sort of stripping away of many things that are often distractions. I guess that's the actual word, because I'm in a fairly restricted life because of the circumstances. Doesn't matter why, but anyway, I'm still living a fairly restricted life. So the field of consciousness, the field of my consciousness is somehow, everything is more stark. It's like it's suddenly gone into black and white. And my awareness of all of these little just thoughts that we hold on to, that I hold on to, expectations about life, past life self-definitions, expectations about the future, regrets about the past, reactions to circumstances, small habits about where security comes from. I can just feel, just every day, it's like the energy comes in and I have all these little vrittis that I'm just having to keep going every day. And so at the end of the day, I'm used up without accomplishing anything. I'm exaggerating it, but you understand what I mean. And that is exactly what happens to us. Swami Kriyananda was very interesting in a certain way. He made a comment once, which he later, well, let me phrase it differently. He didn't want me to publish it, but now that he's not here, I can. When he made a comment once that he was exactly the same in his consciousness when he was asleep as when he was awake. And he explained that to mean that what he actually said was that there were no vrittis. See, what happens for us is a lot of these vrittis are unconscious. I mean, most of these vrittis are unconscious. And so when we go to sleep, we have all these dreams, and often things are revealed to us in our subconscious state that we're not aware of in our conscious state, because when we relax our sort of outward looking at things, a lot of this begins to communicate with us. And we have nightmares, or sometimes we have uplifting dreams, or we become and we do different things in our dreams that we just didn't know were there. Or we realize that we've just been holding this particular point of view about things, or this expectation of security, or this longing, this feeling that we really want something, but we don't even really know what it is from our hearts. All of this is being maintained at all times. And this is karma, because we eventually have to learn, as Swami was talking about himself, that none of this has to be maintained, that none of these little vrittis are really necessary, that my security does not come from having a husband who will buy a big house for me and then leave me as a rich widow. That's not where my security comes from. I don't need to take energy in the first chakra and hold it in the first chakra in a material form. I can let the energy of the divine come to the level of where my security comes from, and then I can lift my energy upward and say my security comes from attunement with God. And so this whole belief system that I have to have this certain money and there's a certain way to get it, I can dissolve the central point. Oh, it's always been God who is taking care of me. Now, think about how that cycle would work. We have good karma, we're taken care of, we have a comfortable home. All of these things, we think that this is where our security comes from, but then perhaps our karma shifts for a time, and we have to live without what we believe to be was the source of our security, and we suddenly discover that really it's all about my consciousness, and it's really been, even though I thought it was this person who was making me secure, really my security comes when I surrender to God. Now we either learn that, Swamiji said, we learn more from having our desires fulfilled than we learn something from having them thwarted, but we learn more from having them fulfilled. And there's a corollary to that where Master said, before you can realize God, every desire, every lingering desire you have has to be fulfilled. Because every one of these vrittis represents a condition that we have placed on our happiness. I'll be perfectly happy if. And it might be a fear, it could be a negative center point, but if I can keep this fear at bay, if this never happens to me, I'll be fine. Or if this happens to me, I'll be fine. But in truth, everything that comes to us comes from God, and we gradually have to dissolve every one of these alternate commitments of energy and allow the divine energy to flow through us in any way that is going to flow, and always having our attention here at the understanding that joy is our true nature. So we go through experiences in which we gradually learn. And when I was talking about each of the chakras, we learn the lesson that every chakra has to offer us, and what we have to learn is not to seek its fulfillment outwardly, but to realize that the longing that it awakens within us will only be fulfilled by our attunement with God. And when we begin to understand that, now let's go back to the picture of, let's think about the river. I'm going to take this all off for a minute here. When we think about the river flowing, you have the energy of the river like this, and then it gets drawn off into vrittis. It's flowing, and these are the different chakras, but it goes like this and it spins. If this energy is strong enough, what will happen is the pull of this vritti, in other words, my belief that I have to have, and let's go with the security and the money story, the belief that I have to have this money to feel secure, but suddenly I feel the power and the flow of God and the joy of my relationship with Him and the freedom it gives me just to love God. And finally, this flow of energy is so strong that everything that was here, that was being sucked away, it just can't do it anymore. It just gets, whoop, just drawn right into the river. So this is the way in which personal transformation actually takes place. It's not a big emotional catharsis. It's not an intellectual understanding. It's an experience in which my belief that I need this in order to be fulfilled is overcome by an understanding that I don't. And the way that happens to us is sometimes we don't have it, and then in an attempt to find equanimity and peace of mind without, we have to generate so much energy reaching up in a higher direction that we give ourselves an experience, and then suddenly we just see through it. We realize that it's not true. And the other way that it happens also is that we get what we want. You know, we have that big home, we have that wonderful husband, we have all those children, we have all that inherited wealth. And we do it again and again and again and again and again. And the anguishing monotony of it suddenly makes me realize that I thought this was going to be the be-all and end-all of what I wanted. Now bear in mind, we spend incarnations working our way to where we really have it, which is why often people don't come to self-realization. They don't become interested in self-realization until they have already had a certain amount of successful experience of the world. So it tends to be a movement, not of people who are just beginning to rise up in society, but it tends to be a movement of people who are already more established. Because if you're still striving to have that physical security, to have that emotional relationship, to have that house or that power or that position or that respect or, you know, that voice that everybody listens to, if you're still striving to have that, the force of that vritti is always going to be stronger than the energy that's trying to flow just freely up toward God. And it takes many incarnations for these things to fulfill themselves. There was a man in our congregation who for a long time, and he was just a very successful man. He had the right intuitions, he made the right decisions, he attracted the right people to himself. And Swami commented, he said, you know, people sort of think his quote, his success is effortless. And Swami was speaking of he could see into the man's reality more than most. He said, most people don't see how many incarnations of hard work this man put in to bring himself to the position where all these things are true. Master said the power of reincarnation is not because everything fails. What drives us to reincarnate is not because everything fails. It's because it almost works. He said, that's a much more diabolical trick of mine. It almost works. You know, it just like, it was a great life, except, you know, Harry was a pretty nice guy, but his brother was much nicer. And his brother was much richer, you know, and in every way his brother was better. So Harry was okay, but, you know, I want Charles the next time, or whoever it is that I'm going to go for the next time, because it was almost just right. So then we work the whole thing again, and we get the other guy, and he was fine, you know, but he got a little tiresome after a while, and I saw this cousin so-and-so, and he was better, so the next time, you know, it's like this, and I just need one more, and then I just need one more. You know, I was a banker instead of an artist, and I really would have been happier as an artist, and this time I'm an artist, you know, but I didn't really make quite enough money, so I have to like get some investments going before I do my art. And it's like it's all almost okay. I mean, think about it. It's always almost okay. So the amount of energy that we have committed to finally get to this, and to finally get to the point where we've tested out pretty much every option there is. And then this sneaking suspicion begins to arise. And some of us have done a lot more of that than others. The sneaking suspicion begins to arise that it's not the details, it's the whole basic plan. And we become less interested then in fulfilling each one of these little vrittis. I'll just become a pianist this lifetime, and I'll just have a bunch of children this lifetime, and I'll just become a teacher this lifetime. And we just think, I want to be in tune with God. And over the course of many incarnations, what happens, you see, is this river gets stronger and stronger within us. And it's not as if all the vrittis go away right away, but we have more and more committed energy toward these vrittis, toward the flow of energy here. And now, when you come to the practice of Kriya Yoga, as an example, Kriya Yoga works specifically to send a strong current of energy through all the chakras and just keep circling energy through the chakras, but bringing it consistently up to the spiritual eye. Then Master adds in energization exercises where we consciously draw energy into our system, but we direct it by our willpower. We don't just allow the UPS driver to just deliver the packages of energy where he wants. No, I'm going to direct this energy where I want it to go. And then I'm going to sit down to meditate, and I'm going to put my attention at the spiritual eye. Because you see, there's one of the ways that we increase the flow of energy is that you open, you create a bigger opening at the top. You create a bigger opening of energy flowing toward the divine, and then the river begins to flow even more strongly, and even the attracting power of that draws more energy in through the medulla. When we really want to do something, then we find that we're suddenly become an open channel for energy to do it, don't we? If we're very unwilling, it's just like hardly any energy flows. But if we love what we're doing, we love square dancing, or we love singing in the choir, or we love training for the marathon, or we love being in the company of someone, we find we just have endless energy to do it. We stay up all night talking. We train for the big event. We discipline ourselves. We don't have to work hard at it. And we have to work hard at it, but we're not working against our own inclinations. Because the most powerful force in the world, the most powerful force is love. And so there's willpower, but what really generates energy for us is because we want to do it. And what really makes us want to do something is because we love doing it. Now, what is the most lovable reality in creation? Well, it is the Creator Himself. Everything that in this world that is attractive to us because in some way or another it's a manifestation of the one who made it. And so we think we love nature or flowers or the thrill of energy running through our body or the art that we create or this beautiful person or whatever it might be. But all of that, every bit of that, is a manifestation of the divine. And we're looking at the surface of it and thinking that we like that attractive surface. We don't understand that what's really attracting us is the vibration of spirit within it. And this is how, we can turn our back on a great deal of the created world, and still be loving it because we're loving what it really is. So we don't have to participate in all the multifarious things that are going on here to really be in love with everything that God has done, because we're loving the source. We're loving the artist who made it all. So anything that we do, and Kriya Yoga meditation is one, and I keep mentioning it, but anything that we do that puts us more in harmony with the power and the presence of the divine within us, what it does is it becomes, it's like a magnetic interplay then between the desire for us to give our energy in an upward direction through the spiritual light to the divine, to pull our very sense of identification away from all of the little specifics that have defined us all this time, and to shift our very definition of self from I will get what the little ego wants, to I will live in harmony with whatever the divine wants of me. The more we constantly direct energy toward the spiritual eye, the more this whole magnetic pattern begins to shift. Because bearing in mind, nothing in it is fixed. Again, it's just the water flowing, and the water's just flowing where the water flows, where the gates are open, where the obstacles are present are removed, and the ocean is calling. See, the ocean is the divine calling us. And the true and natural destiny for all of us is that all of our energy just flows back to God. See, this is how a saint moves in the world. This is how Swami moved in the world. This is how Master moved in the world. He was very active in the world. He didn't just sit in an ashram. The examples that we have in our line of masters, they're very active in the world, but nothing of their activity was directed from egoic identification. And there were no vrittis. There was no karma. In the Bible, Jesus speaks of himself being born without sin. In the Bible, that's how it's described. A synonym for sin simply is ignorance, false desire. It's not evil. It doesn't damn us to hell. It just limits our capacity to be happy. That's all it does. It's just ignorance. But Jesus was born without sin, which meant he had no vrittis. He had no compelling needs to do anything in this world. There were no vrittis in his chakras. So when the energy came into him, it just flowed through the chakras, animated them in their divine qualities, but everything that he did flowed from the Christ consciousness, as did with Master, and to my observation, so did Swamiji. Whereas I, using myself as the example I know best, self-concern. There's a vritti of self-concern everywhere. It's just like, what about me? What about me? How can I put it? I'll go to the heart, let's say. What about me? If I do that, will people like me? If I do this, people are going to be mad at me. I don't want people to be mad at me. There was a period of time in my life when I was just about 19 or 20. I realized that I had an accommodating temperament. I was very accommodating. But I wasn't accommodating out of genuine love. It wasn't really that my heart was really open to people. Is that I was afraid if I didn't accommodate them that they wouldn't like me. So there was this whole personality, this whole way of being built up around this thought, it was at the Heart Chakras where it was, this thought that if I don't accommodate people, they won't like me. So I appeared to be, quite free of desires in certain ways, but I wasn't free at all. I was absolutely terrified. So all this energy was constantly going around to protect that fundamental fear. And then I began to realize, when I began to understand yoga, that it isn't how you look, it's what's at the heart of the vritti. And what we have to dissolve is the heart of each of these vrittis. What is, and this is where we go back to what I've been talking about for the last 3 and 4 weeks, where does security come from? Where does our personal power come from? What is it that really opens the heart and gives us true love? What is it that we're really trying to express? And this is the daily life question, And each of these qualities needs to be brought to its highest level. And in doing so, we have to find out why is it not like that. And oftentimes this comes, I'll talk about the heart chakra for a moment, a lot of people get their hearts broken. It happens pretty steadily in people's lives. And at first it can appear to be like a terrible tragedy. I trusted, I gave myself, I hoped, I thought this was going to happen. But then we have to ask ourselves, where does love really come from? Master has this chant, in this world, Mother, no one can love me. In this world, they do not know how to love me. Where is there truly loving thee? There my soul longs to be. It's a very, very poignant chant. And sometimes people sing it thee instead of me, as if I'm adrift with all these Philistines who don't love God, and I wish to be among the company of saints. And that's also a way to sing it. But in this world, Mother, no one can love me. I mean, no one wants to accept that. You really don't. You just hold on. We got this. Somebody will, somebody will, somebody will. And interestingly, and I'll just go, somebody will, and more than God will. Swami actually said that the desire for a soulmate is God planted, and it really will come to us. But not in the way that we think. We think it's going to come to us to fulfill our human personality desires. And it's not. But the fundamental idea that we do have a divinely intended other half, Swami said, is true. And he wrote a whole book about it. It's called Love Perfected, Life Divine. That's a whole nother subject, actually. I made that, I made an audio book out of that book. I don't know if it's my best work, but it's really actually very interesting. It's a woman protagonist, so I read the whole story. And it's about understanding what true love is. And in the story, there's a romance. She has a man who is her partner in the story, and in the end, they are united. But they're united with each other because they're united first with God. Once they have united their souls with God, then there's no vritti here holding them. And so then that true divine union also can take place. It's a great mystery, isn't it? But what happens is the heart gets broken. So then one of two things happens when the heart gets broken. Either we cling all the harder, just make it even more, more and more and more and more and more. And either it's like, I'm never going to love again. People are no damn good. Nobody can be trusted. And whoever betrayed you, whether it was a man or a woman, you'll condemn the whole gender because of the way they treated you, whatever you want. You would develop all kinds of evil revenges against people. But what you've done is you've created this huge vritti here. Again. And this is what challenges us. Every time something goes wrong, maybe we have, our security is here and we have all this money, it's all worked up, and then there's hyperinflation and none of it really means anything. Or you make some weird investment mistake and it's all taken away from you. Or there's a cyclone, or a fire, or a war. Just like everything. We cling so hard, we work so hard. So what do you do at that point? Do you actually say, if this is what God has sent me, what good thing can he be sending me? Swami was fond of telling the story of this rich man who had been rich, who lost his money and determined to end his life. So he went by himself down to the ocean, and he was going to walk into the ocean and let the surf take him and drown him. But he kept trying to go into the ocean, and the ocean kept throwing him back to the shore, and he was just getting battered and beaten, and he couldn't figure it out. And then in tumbling around like this, he saw a very, very fragile shell. And he couldn't understand how this fragile shell could survive when he, a big man, was being bashed against the shore repeatedly. And he realized that he was resisting and the fragile shell was just cooperating. And I think it's a true story. The man just began to change. Instead of saying, this is what I must have, he let go of what he thought he had to have, and instead he said to the divine at the spiritual eye, you've taken all my money, so what do you want from me now? And when we do that correctly, well, by correctly I mean when we sincerely and really do it, and we don't just create another vritti, which is I'm going to pretend to trust God so that I won't get hurt anymore. But we still are holding on to this profound idea of how we want it to be. But when we really just let it go. And this is not easy. This is why we all carry these vrittis from lifetime to lifetime. So when a person reaches the end of their life, all of these chakras are whatever you've made them. And they're shifting, they're constantly shifting pattern. And over the course of a lifetime, if you have lived well, if you have done your best, if you have lived honorably, if you've tried to elevate your consciousness, then the pattern of the chakras that you're holding when you take your last breath, we hope will be purer and freer than the pattern of the chakras that you were when you took your first breath. Because all during this lifetime, however long it was, we were constantly making deposits and moving energy around. We're moving energy hopefully up the spine, to a more and more refined sense of our own desires. And even more profoundly, we hope, we're learning, that when the heart breaks, we realize, oh, well, I just put my faith in the wrong place. I just allowed myself to imagine that I could love God in this particular form, and that was the only way that I could love, when I really see that it's God Himself that I want to love. And then the river begins to flow, and this vritti, which was a painful vritti, gradually just begins to dissolve. And what happens, you see, which is so much fun, on the spiritual path, Swami put it this way. He said, it's not a good idea ever to judge yourself. But by the time you can see any actual pattern that you have, he said, because energy is always in motion. So by the time you can actually see a level, any level, he said, you're already moving past it. He said, who we are is where our energy is directed, what our aspiration is. And when you think of it like this, if our aspiration is to love God more and more, and we're doing our meditation, and we're focusing at the spiritual eye, and we're praying, and every time we find ourselves sucked off of our true reality into some peripheral whirlpool, we try to resolve that, not by clinging all the harder, but by letting it go even more. This is why this word surrender is so often, you also often hear it in the spiritual path. Like, what are we surrendering? It's not, Swami sometimes, he would use that word, and he used it often, but sometimes he would also say that he didn't like it all that much because it sort of sounded like, well, you're up against the wall and you're out of ammunition and you have no other option, so finally you surrender. So the more dynamic expression of that is self-offering. And the more dynamic expression of that is, well, self-offering. This is who I am. I bring it to you. I don't hold it. I don't protect it. I don't hide it. I bring it to you. So if in the course of a lifetime we are constantly affirming that even though these vrittis draw me, even though I desire this and I'm restless this way and I'm frightened about this thing or that thing, fear is tremendous. And we're living now in quite uncertain times. And so the possibility of becoming frightened about so many things is just right there in front of us, and we haven't even begun to see this unfold. Every day I read in the paper, finally now, because all the protections put in place half a year ago are all beginning to run out, 50% of these employees are let go and 50% of these are let go, and all of this is, there's going to be this massive change, I feel. It seems likely, and Master predicted it, and we can sort of see the signs of it coming now. There's a great deal to be frightened about. So what do we do with that fear? What do we do with that fear? And I'm more at the end of my life than the beginning of it, but I have many friends who are 50 years younger than me. And I think, it's going to be a very interesting world. You were born for it, of course, because for this hour were we born. So when we feel those vrittis, pulling our consciousness over like this, and in the center of it, it's just common sense to be worried about this. Is it? Or can I, by an effort of will, increase the flow of energy upward toward the divine, increase my commitment to what each of these chakras represents in its ideal form, and then in doing that, increase the flow of the river. And then what happens is, you see, the river dissolves these vrittis without our even knowing it. It's that the river has become so strong. And so we work out our karma by living through it, by having all these things happen to us, and then we're up against it. But we also work out our karma merely by increasing the flow of the river. This is why Master says one kriya properly done. That's the caveat. One kriya properly done, which is basically one inhalation and exhalation. So you can, a controlled inhalation and exhalation, but it's not very long, is the equivalent of 1 year of right living. Meaning all the experiences that you could have in a year that would teach you to seek God rather than seek fulfillment in another way, you can generate sufficient energy with one kriya to dissolve a whole year of vrittis. I mean, that's really quite a promise, isn't it? And this is the last part, and then we're going to sit together and do some affirmations. We can also simply work directly on the chakras, which is to consciously and deliberately focus our attention on what the upward moving direction of that chakra is, and by a conscious act of will, devotion, determination, and surrender, we can also increase the flow of the river and thus dissolve the vrittis. And that's what spiritual freedom is. When all the energy that God gives us, we give back to God to use. Instead of all the energy that God gives us, we dissipate in all these other ways, and then whatever's left, we give back to God. It's really a very simple, it's a simple equation, it's a very simple visualization. The more we can give of ourselves to God, the more we're going to be able to give ourselves to God. And the more freely that river will run until the day will come when nothing else draws us. So what I want to do now, and in the materials that I know that you have access to for this course, we have an affirmation to strengthen each chakra. And I think I'd like to end this course just by going through these, and I want to tell you a little bit how to do this. Now, if in the course of the process of listening to these, you recognize which qualities are the ones that you need to work on the most, then you can begin to do these affirmations or something similar to it. These are, choices, but they're not the only possible choices, where you basically strengthen the upward moving direction of what earth, air, fire, water, what it represents. I find the elements are a very good way to think about this. So here's one condition about doing an affirmation to strengthen the chakra is we are aware of the chakra where it is in our physical body, but our real attention is at the spiritual eye, because if we can magnetize the right vibration at the spiritual eye, the energy of the chakra itself will automatically be drawn upward. It's a safer way to do affirmations, because if we put our attention too much in the chakra, There's often too much magnetism on its own level. And we may find that instead of our conscious will being strong enough to raise the energy, the vritti of the chakra itself pulls our consciousness down into it. So you slightly divide your attention, meaning that you may be conscious of where the chakra is in your body, and a little bit of your attention is at that chakra, but your primary attention is at the spiritual eye. All right? And if you find your energy being drawn downward into the chakra, because all the chakras are below the spiritual eye, then forget the chakra and concentrate only on the quality of the chakra at the spiritual eye, enforcing that energy there, and then it will magnetize the river and it'll draw the energy. Okay, so we'll just spend not very long here, just a few minutes to finish our class, starting chakra by chakra and feeling, starting at the base of the spine, feeling the quality of that chakra in terms of the element. So we start with the Earth Chakra, and what the Earth Chakra is like granite rock. Granite is the most, extraordinarily hard, unmoving. If you've ever been anywhere in the mountains or by a riverbed where you see this powerful granite rock, nothing can move it. It holds its power. And this is who we are in our commitment to truth and to right action. And the affirmation that goes with it, I am steadfast, determined, unshakably loyal to truth. I endure and accept all things with calm faith in God. I am steadfast, determined, unshakably loyal to truth. I endure and accept all things with calm faith in God. And now we have that bedrock of steadfast loyalty to the divine way. And then we can be free in the way we move. See how the river water just flows over the rock. And the rock enjoys the river water just flowing over it, but it remains steadfast in its commitment and its understanding. So we feel that just our arms outstretched, standing in the middle of the current and just feeling the river just flowing over us. We watch little bits of leaves and twigs just enjoying the ride. We think of the little fragile shell being turned about in the waves, but because it has no resistance, and we can be free as we move through the river because we're standing on that granite rock of I know who I am, I know where I'm going, I know what I believe. So then we can say, I flow ever freely on the tides of grace. I flow ever freely on the tides of grace. I flow ever freely on the tides of grace. So now then comes power. We're steadfast in our beliefs. We're unafraid to explore and expand. And those two qualities together give us great personal power. Because again, we start with a steadfast understanding of truth, and then this wide open creativity. I don't have to be afraid about anything in the world. I don't have to protect myself because I know who I am, I know where I stand. And then I apply my willpower and I take everything that I am, all the potential, and I turn it into light. I dissolve all limitations by the power of my will. So you feel that fire just coming through and transforming, just melting all those vrittis, drawing them into the river by a conscious act of will. So at the fire chakra we say, I cast my thoughts, desires, and all past karma into the flames of divine love. Make me whole, make me pure, make me one with thee. I cast my thoughts, desires, and all past karma into the flames of divine love. Make me whole, make me pure, make me one with thee. I cast my thoughts, desires, and all past karma into the flames of divine love. Make me whole, make me pure, make me one with thee. So now the power of the earth, the freedom of the water, the determination of the fire to transform ourselves. And now it just rises free into the air. We get to the heart chakra. The fire becomes air. And these are the two chakras, as I spoke, that work together. The fire transforms limitations, and then it releases it into the air, and then love becomes possible. It becomes possible to really be unified in the world, to not just be taking for ourselves, but really to give. And so we affirm, as I radiate love and goodwill to others, I will open the channel for God's love to come to me. Divine love is the magnet that draws to me all good. As I radiate love and goodwill to others, I will open the channel for God's love to come to me. Divine love is the magnet that draws to me all good. As I radiate love and goodwill to others, I will open the channel for God's love to come to me. Divine love is the magnet that draws all good to me. Now that we've opened ourselves to be God's loving channel, not weakly, but with the transforming power of the fire in which we've cast all our desires and all our personal ambitions and all our limitations with the willpower, then we open ourselves to God's love, and then we really become light and free. And we rise to the fifth chakra, to the ether quality, in which all distinctions between us and God's creation become very, very slight, very slight. Oh, such calmness, such freedom, such peace. We speak our truth, we're unafraid, we speak it with power, but also sweetened by love. And we say, free at last, my spirit soars into infinite skies of bliss. Free at last, my spirit soars into infinite skies of bliss. Free at last, my spirit soars into infinite skies of bliss. Now we come to the sixth chakra, and from the medulla we look to the spiritual eye. We're resting in the medulla, but we're moving toward the spiritual eye. And from there we speak so simply, I offer myself and all that I am at thy feet of omnipresence. I offer myself and all that I am at thy feet of omnipresence. I offer myself and all that I am at thy feet of omnipresence. Then we rise into the spiritual eye, seeing the golden ring and the blue field and the white star of Christ consciousness there. I awake in thy light. I am blissful, I am free. I awake in thy light. I awake in thy light. I am blissful, I am free. I awake in thy light. I awake in thy light. I am blissful, I am free. I awake in thy light. God bless you, my friends. Thank you for sharing this experience with me. I pray that God and Gurus and all the masters will guide you and bless you, that the beautiful ideas that I've done my best to convey to you be received in such a way that they become not merely words and ideas, but the actual realization of the divine within you. Joy to you, my friends.